One of my very favorite podcasts is ending this week. And to be honest, I've been feeling a little emotional about it. It's called The Longest Shortest Time, and it's a show about families in all their forms. But it started with a much more specific topic: struggles in early parenthood. I discovered this show when my kid was just a couple weeks old and binge listened to the entire 180 episode archive in the first few months of her life, mostly while nursing or holding a sleeping infant. Now I feel a little bit silly getting emotional about the end of a podcast. I don't even really know these people, right? But it also makes sense in a lot of ways. I felt really lonely in those first months of being a parent, and that podcast kept me company. The host had a really similar birth story to mine, which she shared a lot about in those early episodes. And one of the first episodes I listened to was called My Newborn, the Expletive. I'll let you imagine the word that goes there, which definitely described the way I felt about my newborn sometimes. In moments when I was feeling like I was totally alone in my struggles, this show reminded me that I wasn't. That in fact, the world was filled with other people facing similar challenges. It's so often the challenging parts of our lives that make us feel like we are alone. When our personal lives feel hard, when the world feels like it's just too much to hold, it gets harder for us to remember our connections with each other. There's something about those hard emotions, grief, fear, anger, hurt, challenge, that push us into isolation. Perhaps it's that we don't want to burden others, or that we feel like if we don't talk about it, then it won't be real. Or perhaps it's our New England stoicism. We can handle the cold weather and our hard feelings on our own, thank you very much. Or perhaps it's the rampant individualism in our culture, that sense that we are told every day that we should be able to do it all by ourselves, pull ourselves up by the proverbial bootstraps. Whatever it is, I can't tell you the number of times I have heard people apologize for sharing something hard, even with me, a minister. It's literally part of my job to help you carry the hard stuff. And people apologize for sharing it. Or they choose not to share at all, out of fear of judgment perhaps, or a sense of discretion. And there's nothing inherently wrong with keeping that hard stuff to yourself. There are times when that feels right and good. But often there is an unnecessary burden in that discretion. You end up having to carry whatever it is that is hard all by yourself. And that honestly makes life harder than it needs to be. And this is actually why Hillary Frank, the host of The Longest Shortest Time, started her podcast. She had moved to a new town soon after having her kid and didn't really know anyone, and she was struggling. What Hillary found was that the way to get people to actually talk about their challenges was to stick a microphone in front of them. She found community and connection in her interviews, and community found her. She started the show because she wanted to feel less alone in her struggles and ended up helping so many other people, myself included. Now, starting a podcast to share our struggles with the whole world might not be everyone's cup of tea. But I do think we can find the places that feel right, the places where we can show up with our whole selves. We need those places in our lives. We need those people with whom we don't have to hold back. We need communities that we can come to where we can look around look into each other's eyes, and know that we're not alone. Where we can, as our anthem put it, feel like we've been found. As our words for reflection suggest, when we are able to plug in to our sources of support, they can help to shine a light on the tangled mess of our lives. And somehow, inexplicably, with that light, it gets easier to untangle ourselves. Humans are just like that string of lights, wired for connection, says Aaron Powers. It's when we're wound most tightly that we need the connection most of all. We're at our best selves when we're plugged in to each other. We find our true purpose and spark with others, not alone. And it's in these connections that we shine most brightly. This is the core of Unitarian Universalism, that we find our true purpose and spark with others, not alone. And in these connections, we shine most brightly. I would even say that in those connections is where the holy reveals itself to us. Have you ever had one of those moments where you were struck, perhaps all of a sudden or perhaps more gradually, by that sense of connection, by the surety that you were not alone? A moment where you felt like you had been found. What did it feel like in your body? What did it feel like in your heart? Sometimes we actively seek out those moments of connection, and sometimes they surprise us. Sometimes they even come when we actively weren't seeking them out. One of my holiday traditions is watching The Muppet Family Christmas with a group of friends. The movie is cheesy and fun, but also heartwarming, of course. The basic plot line is that Fozzie Bear is surprising his mom by bringing all of his Muppet friends to his mom's farm for Christmas. What a surprise, right? What he doesn't know is that his mom is planning to go to Malibu for the holiday and has rented out her house to Doc and his dog Sprocket, who want a nice, quiet Christmas in the country. Now, obviously, all of those plans go out the window when Fozzie Bear and a van full of Muppets arrive. Throughout the movie, more and more Muppets show up until there are so many of them that a couple of them have to sleep on hangers hung on hooks on the wall. Unsurprisingly, neither Doc nor Fozzie's mom are particularly excited about this change of plans at first. But by the end of the movie, they come around. You see them decorating and singing carols and sorting out sleeping arrangements, all in good cheer. Near the end, Doc says, "We were planning to have a quiet Christmas in the country, but this is so much better." You can see it in his eyes. He thought he wanted to be alone with Sprocket, but actually spending the holidays packed in with all these odd creatures was an unexpected blessing. Connection he needed, though he didn't even know it. In that house full of these Muppets who he had never met before, he felt like he had been found. We can't always count on connection to come to us, however. It is not every day that a van full of Muppets shows up on our doorstep. The reality is that connection is a two-way street. Sometimes all you have to do is be willing to receive that connection when it comes your way. But sometimes you have to be willing to reach out and ask for help. When Sadie saw that squirrel tail flit by in her office, she wasn't sure she could deal with it on her own. In fact, at first, she was very sure she couldn't deal with it and just closed the door, a little overwhelmed. And in that particular moment, wishing she was maybe a little bit more alone in her office. But later that evening, when she told her story, when she asked for help, help emerged. And with that help came laughter and connection, and everyone left with a pretty great story. One of the things that your board identified in our mission process last year is that you as a congregation are really good at helping each other, at offering support. But you're less good at asking for help, at reaching out during difficult times. I totally get this. I, too, am notoriously bad at asking for help. And so I understand all of the insecurities that may lead you to close up and push people away. Asking for help is vulnerable, and yet so often it leads to moments of connection and care, just like that squirrely tail. Last year, right around this time, perhaps on this very day, I came down with one of the very worst stomach bugs of my life. As the second terrible day came to a close, it appeared that Tristan was about to be taken down with it too. I literally did not know how we were going to make it through the night. You see, my kid is good at a lot of things, but sleeping has never been one of them. And this was during the phase when she was waking up 6 to 8 times a night, which was a long phase, both literally and figuratively. At first, I just curled up on the couch, despairing and feeling miserable, and also trying to make sure my child didn't kill herself with the least energy possible. And then I sucked it up, and I made a call for help. My dear friend answered, and to my shock, she said, "Sure, I'll drive up from Boston to your German-infested house and spend my night trying to get your stubborn child to sleep." I have really good friends. And so she and her partner came up, sanitized the entire downstairs, and let us sleep through the night. At the time, I mostly felt shock that she said yes, and relief. When I called, I really didn't think that she would actually come, but I didn't know what else to do. It was kind of a big ask. But looking back on it now, what I feel is awe. Awe that there are people in my life who care that much. So I get all the anxieties and vulnerabilities of asking for help. There's still a little piece of me that feels guilty that I made her come into my flu-infested home. She didn't get the flu, by the way. But I challenge us, me included, to try it, to try asking for help, even if we think that there is no chance anyone is going to want to listen to our struggles. Asking for help can be even harder in this season, when our struggles come in the midst of this time of year that is supposed to be joyful. When the streets are decked with sparkly lights and the radio is blaring tidings of comfort and joy, it can feel especially stark if you are in a space in your life that is not so sparkly. And it can feel especially vulnerable to admit that you are in that space. But it's a dangerous myth, this idea that we just have to deal with it or that we have to go it alone. My wish for all of you is that you know in your heart and in your soul that if you just reach out, if you seek that connection, someone will show up with bleach and hand sanitizer, with pool noodles and poster board, with a van full of strange but sweet creatures, with love and care. And my hope is that this congregation can be one of those places where you show that vulnerability, where you ask for help, even when you think no one would ever want to be burdened by your story. And that this will be a place where you can feel like you have been found, where you can be reminded that you are not alone. May it be so.
Have you ever felt like nobody was there? Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere? Have you ever felt like you could disappear? Like you could fall and no one would hear?
So let that lonely feeling wash away, 'cause maybe there's a reason to believe you'll be okay. 'Cause when you don't feel strong enough to stand, you can reach out your hand. And
someone will come running. They'll take you home. Even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, and when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, 'cause you'll reach up and you'll rise again. Lift your head and look around. You will be found. 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 You call out, you're a little less alone. If you only say the word, from across the silence, your voice is heard. Oh, someone will come running, oh, to take you home. Someone will come running to take you home, home. Even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, 'cause you'll reach up and you'll rise again. If you only look around, you will be found. You are not